I'd like you to go with me this morning to Luke chapter 10. And I want to read a story that's relatively well known in the Bible. And it begins in verse 38 and it goes through verse 42. So Luke chapter 10, we'll begin reading in verse 38 and we'll go through verse 42. Now it happened as they went that he entered a certain village. This is talking, of course, about Jesus. And a certain woman named Martha welcomed him into her house, and she had a sister called Mary, who also sat at Jesus' feet and heard his word. But Martha was distracted with much serving. She approached him and said, "Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to serve alone? Therefore tell her to help me." And Jesus answered and said to her, "Martha, Martha, you are worried and troubled about many things. But one thing is needed, and Mary has chosen that good part, which will not be taken away from her." One of the things that I struggle with from time to time is the fact that I don't accomplish nearly as much in a day as some people. Now, there are people I know who not only can outwork me in terms of the amount of hours they put into a day, they do on a regular basis. They can put out a level of work and accomplishment that, frankly, if I tried to keep up with them, I wouldn't make it. And one of the things that happens in our society is that we measure someone's value by their productivity and by the amount of hours. And that's kind of a little bragging point, you see, especially among men, but increasingly among women as well. They'll be standing around talking about how many hours they put in at their work or what they're doing, and it becomes a point of boasting in a sense where, look at me, look what I'm doing. And it's our way of saying, I'm important, I'm valuable because I'm so busy. And for someone like me, I can't keep up with those people. I don't have the energy level. I don't have the ability to do what they do. It can be a little bit disheartening at times to realize, man, this person can outdo me and they're older than me. And yet, Jesus here in this story talks about these two kinds of people represented by these sisters. And you have Martha, and she represents those overachievers. She represents the people that get up early and stay up late and don't take a break all day, and they just charge hard and they get all kinds of things done. And then you have Mary, her sister, who basically what she does in this story is sit and listen to Jesus. Essentially, she puts herself in the place of a disciple, a learner, a follower. Now, a lot of people use this story in a way that's not warranted by the text itself. A lot of people come out and they condemn Martha. They condemn the workaholic. They condemn the person that is out there getting a lot of things done. And certainly workaholism is a problem, and I really could make a scriptural case that it's a sin. But in this story, in this context, what you actually don't see is Jesus condemning Martha. There's nowhere in the text where Jesus says to Martha, what you're doing is wrong. Rather, what he says is there's one thing that's needed. And that's what Martha was missing. It wasn't that she needed to stop working. It wasn't that she needed to put aside all of her goals and ambitions. She had a group of people to feed, and it was an issue for her. And Jesus never says, just stop doing that. That's just not in the text. Now, you could maybe make that case by implication, but you can't prove it from the text. Nothing wrong with working hard, nothing wrong with getting things done until you miss that one thing. And what is that one thing? To spend time at the feet of Jesus. Now, and what I'm going to say here, I don't mean to sound like I'm boasting or bragging, because I have so many shortcomings in my life that I don't have time to tell you how many times I failed the Lord. So I'm not putting myself up as an example of how you ought to live. I just want to say that the one thing God has graciously allowed me to do is to realize the importance of time set aside in my day, every day, where I do nothing but sit at the feet of Jesus. And here's what I mean when I say that. I make time every day to pray. Not just a quick prayer, not just a quick, help me Lord, and then I move on, but to actually sit in his presence and to listen to him, to worship him, to reflect on his glory, however it works out. I don't have a formula for prayer, but I spend time with God every day. And then I spend time in the Word every day, not just a quick verse and then close my Bible and run off and do what I really want to do, but actually to linger over his Word and pray my way through passages and ask God to speak to me through the Scriptures. And I don't say any of those things to brag. The reason I say them is because I'm not a Martha. I'm not someone who has the stamina, the energy to just push through and make things happen. I need the Lord desperately because I have nothing in myself to offer to anyone, especially in what I do as a pastor. If God doesn't do it, it's not going to get done. And I can't fake it. I'm just not that good. And so I need the Lord to minister to me if I'm going to minister to you. Now, obviously, I can make the case how this applies to the life of a pastor, and some of you would see that immediately, and you would understand exactly what I'm saying. But there's a lot of you that you say, well, you know, Gary, your life is different than mine. Pastors live in a different world than the average person in the church, and a lot of you are going out to the work world, and you're doing things that have nothing to do with my life in terms of what you're going to do during a day, and I understand that. But let me talk to you about something, to tell you a story. I have a friend, and I'm not going to give you his name or the details of his life because he's a very humble person, and he wouldn't want to see himself exalted in any way, but he's a pretty handy person. He can fix things. I remember him telling me a story of how several years ago he got hired as the chief maintenance person at I'll just say a large facility. I won't go into any more details than that. But essentially what people found out was that he was handy. He wasn't necessarily a trained technician in any specific field at that point. He could just fix stuff. And he began to get phone calls from different people in this facility saying, hey, can you come over and fix whatever it was, something mechanical, something that needed a technician. He wasn't qualified. And he told me how he would go and look at whatever it was, and again, I'm keeping the details vague here, and he would realize he didn't know how to fix it. And he'd have someone standing there looking at him expectantly, and he also knew that his ability to keep that job and to feed his family depended on him keeping these people happy. And he said what he learned to do very quickly, this man's a very committed Christian who loves the Lord. He just, as he sat there or kneeled down looking at whatever this thing was that he had to fix, he would pray. And he would say, Lord, I can't fix this. I don't know what's wrong, but I'm asking for your Holy Spirit to guide me. And he says, as he would pray that prayer so many times, he didn't really hear a voice, but he would just suddenly know what was wrong with that piece of equipment, and he would know what needed to be done. And he said to me, it wasn't that he figured it out. It was that he had gone to the Lord, and the Lord had given him divine direction. And he would be able to fix those things, and everybody would be happy. And he said what also would happen is that it gave him tremendous opportunities to witness to people who were amazed at what he could do. And he was able to say, you know, it's not me. I pray, and God helps me. And some of them would just look at him like he was speaking a foreign language, and others would be like caught off guard. And it would be an opportunity for him to share the gospel of Jesus Christ. I think outside of the world of pastors and in the world that most of you live in, this kind of thing is how this story would apply. It's one thing to be a Martha, to be running around, to be doing this, to be doing that, and just powering through based on your own energy and your own abilities and your own strength. And a lot of people do that, and it's, as I said, a source of pride in American society to be a Martha, to be the hard charger, to be the person that arrives at work early and stays late longer than anybody else, and accomplishes things in their own abilities. But God doesn't necessarily bless that. In the story, Jesus doesn't condemn hard work. Again, he never condemns Martha, but what does he say? One thing is needed, verse 42, and Mary has chosen that good part which will not be taken away from her. There's a time in your day that you need to set aside to be with the Lord. This friend of mine that I told you about that would pray his way through fixing things, he also said that one of the things he was doing on a regular basis was starting his day with the Lord, in the Word, in prayer. As he was driving to work, he'd have worship music on. So by the time he got there, he was already in a state of mind where he was ready to hear what the Holy Spirit was saying to him. See, a lot of us have the idea that the Holy Spirit only speaks in purely spiritual terms. He'll call you to be a missionary to Africa. He'll tell you to go teach a children's Sunday school class, and certainly that's a huge part of it. But listen, the Holy Spirit wants to guide you in all kinds of areas of your life. But if you're purely a Martha, if you're just charging through in your own strength, figuring that through energy and willpower and putting in longer hours than anybody else that you're going to succeed, you're never going to arrive at the place of blessing that God has for you. So don't be just a Martha. You can't change who you are. But if you're a Martha, you can add some Mary into your life. And by that I mean if you're someone who's dependent on yourself and your own strength, you need to take the time to acknowledge that without God you're nothing. You need to take the time to humble yourself before Him. Ask Him to be with you throughout your day. Ask Him to guide you and direct you and to give you wisdom that does not belong to you on your own. You know what? That will not be taken away from you. That's the words of Jesus. Mary has chosen the good part, and it will not be taken away from her. Jesus doesn't condemn the Marthas of the world. Let's not take this text in the wrong way. And He doesn't necessarily praise Mary for not doing anything to help her sister. But He does say there is one thing we all need, and that's to spend time at His feet, learning, worshiping, and growing.